Darkcast Network. Indie pods with a dark side.
A man and his wife approach the door of a modernized low-rise apartment building. They walk up and ring the bell. Equipped with a tape recorder, camera, and black attaché case, the man is a self-proclaimed demonologist, and the woman, his wife, a trance medium. The visit is official business. A case referral by an Episcopalian priest called in from the church's administrative offices in Connecticut. The case involves two young nurses that had communicated with what they took to be a human spirit. The priest was doubtful that it was truly a human spirit, as one of them had been physically attacked by the entity. The door bolt unsnaps, and a young, sober-faced woman answers the door. Donna Jennings introduces herself and ushers the couple into her apartment. When they arrive in the kitchen, they are introduced to Lou Carl and his fiancée, Angie Stapleton. They sit at the table drinking coffee, but don't say much as Ed and Lorraine continue to sit down and join them. Ed grabs the cassette recorder from his bag, loads a tape, and presses the record button. He wants to hear the whole story. There are two stories, really, Donna says. One that began earlier this week with Lou. The other one's about Annabelle, but I suppose they're both about Annabelle. I'm not sure. Ed asks, "Who's Annabelle?" Angie replies, "She belongs to Donna." "Belongs?" questions Lorraine. "Is Annabelle a living, breathing being?" Donna replies, "Is she alive? She moves, she acts alive, but no, I don't think she's alive." "Annabelle is in the living room. She's sitting on the sofa," Angie replies and points to the sofa. Lorraine looks to her left into the living room and says, "Are you talking about the doll?" Sup, creeps, and welcome to Creepy Confidential. Is Mothman really a supernatural force predicting impending doom? Did Apollo 11 really land on the moon in 1969? Did you find out if that was a cult that was living just 2 doors down that you waved to every single day when you got your mail? If these are the things you ponder when you should be sleeping, then I would like to welcome you to Creepy Confidential. I'm your host, Noelle, your resident weirdo Wisconsinite. I open case files on my favorite cryptids, cults, conspiracies, and other worldly creepy, with new cases, live broadcasts, and local lore. Some stories have been lost with time. Others are perhaps still happening today in your local communities, right up under your very creepy noses. So get ready, creeps. It's Creepy Confidential. Few quick announcements before we get going here. Creepy Confidential merch is ready and available. We have dropped all the creepy cool designs that we have. We have women, men, and even for baby designs. The classic logo, but in 3D and regular. We have the vintage Dracula mask, Creepy Confidential, and then the Indrid Cold, which is actually a design that would have been for the episode, but was never used. So a fun little tidbit. We also have a one-of-a-kind little grocery design, because we are, of course, non-GMO, pure creepy, so that we have that in there for you too. You can go to creepyconfidential.com to get your merch, and it'll take you directly to our actual merch site. And then moving on to kind of the end of the year type announcements, our 2024 After Dark season has come to an end. But fear not, because soon you will see an announcement for our guest search for the 2025 schedule. If you would like to catch our 2024 After Dark episodes, they are available in our permanent lineup videos now on our YouTube page. Our Halloween special was so much fun. The trivia was awesome. I had a great time, and I wasn't even the one answering the questions. Really, really great time. But for our 2025 season, we are looking for like-minded content creators to be a part of the 2025 After Dark season. Authors, seasoned paranormal investigators, podcasters, and more. We actually already have one on the line already, so we are really excited to get them into our January spot. Stay tuned for the announcement on our Instagram, and that's when you'll be able to start getting in contact with us about that. You can find us under the handle @CreepyConfidential, all one word. And then last announcement, I promise, our 2024 episodes, our regular audio episodes, are wrapping up in November, and we plan on taking an extended holiday break and then picking up again in 2025. In the meantime, you can catch up on all of our creepy content, including our audio episodes and our video episodes on YouTube. Our audio episodes are available everywhere that you get your favorite podcasts, but your favorite podcast is Creepy Confidential. So you find one and stick to it. But really, they are available. Spotify, iTunes, Spreaker, we're everywhere. All right, creeps. Now, on to the show. Sup, creeps, and welcome to episode 35. Today we're going to be talking about Annabelle the Possessed Doll. This one might be a little bit of a longer one than some of our previous ones. I have a lot to talk about. We're going to go through the basic story, and then at the end we're going to kind of talk about my thoughts on this case, because it's interesting. So, but we'll get to that. I don't want to get too far ahead of here. So, to most and many, Ed and Lorraine Warren should be synonymous with paranormal investigating and cursed objects, right? Everybody knows about the big Conjure universe, but in the truth reality, that is Ed and Lorraine's kind of history of investigations. Now, some even call them the mother and father of paranormal investigating. The Amityville Case, the Perron Family Case, and Annabelle the Possessed Doll. The Amityville Case, the Perron Family Case, and Annabelle the Possessed Doll. All these cases were the Lorraines, and they have inspired many full-length feature films, and even some have their own extended universes. Like I mentioned, The Conjuring and Annabelle actually does too. The Amityville Horror, The Conjuring, The Haunting in Connecticut, and Annabelle. Those are all kind of just a few of the movies that are cases of theirs. Today, Creepy Confidential is cracking into the case of Annabelle. I will deliver the information that is readily present by the public, but more importantly, by the NESPR. And then I plan on delivering my opinion on this one at the end, like I talked about. I'm sure it will garner some conflicted opinions, but as I built the case file, I started feeling some sort of way about this one. For those creeps that are unfamiliar with the NESPR, it is the New England Society for Psychic Research, founded in 1952 by Ed and Lorraine Warren. Ed was a self-taught demonologist, and Lorraine was a trance medium, also known as a trance speaker. She believed that entering a trance allowed her to connect with spirits and gain knowledge that would be inaccessible while awake. Since this was their case, I'll be using the case file information from the NESPR site, which is now ran by Tony Spera, which is their son-in-law, as well as the material in the book The Demonologist, The Extraordinary Career of Ed and Lorraine Warren by Gerald Daniel Brittle. Has lots of really good breakdowns, conversations, so I'll kind of going back and forward between the two of those, since those are literally source material. In addition to the literary references, there are some in real life claims that occurred following interactions with this possessed doll that I found as well. Let's proceed, shall we? In today's day and age, the story of Annabelle the Doll is by far one of the most popular stories when it comes to possessed and haunted dolls. We all love a good Robert the Doll story, but thanks to the Conjure universe, Annabelle has really come to the forefront. We're going to start with the origin story and then go off into little tidbits, information, in my opinion on the matter, which I know I don't typically give, but I kind of, like to make sure I'm delivering it, though, in a certain way. When you read the story of Annabelle, from kind of several different sources. There are a few minor differences, as there usually are in stories like this. In the parts that are the same throughout, those ones kind of make sense. But then what's curious are the parts that make Annabelle so popular. The origin story of this doll goes back to 1970, when a mother purchased a Raggedy Ann-style doll as a birthday present for her daughter, Donna. The doll was no small novelty toy. It was approximately the size of a 4-year-old child, with black, pupilless eyes that would stare out into the open space with a painted-on smile that gave the doll an expression of kind of grim irony. According to Donna, the doll was given to her on her last birthday, and when questioned by Ed Warren when the activity started, she told them about a year ago. So it seems as if the activity started pretty much as soon as they got together. Donna would make her bed every day and then put the doll on her bed as decoration after the covers and pillows were organized. They noticed the movements becoming more dramatic, and Donna and Angie, her roommate, would come home and find the doll in a completely different room or a different position from where they had left it. Sometimes Annabelle would be found sitting on the couch, or with its legs crossed and arms folded as if it was upset or disgruntled. Other times, the doll would be maybe leaning against a chair in the dining room. On several occasions, Donna would place the doll on the couch, and when she returned, would find it back in her bedroom with the door closed. It appeared that the doll kind of had a mind of its own. Something that always crosses my mind with cases like this, when something moves while they're gone in a way, that they just can't explain it, is why didn't anybody pick up a camera? A Polaroid was something that was available. Or if they truly think this doll is moving around, put it in a cage. This way, it can't change rooms because it's in a cage, and no outside sources can mess with it if it's locked up. But who am I kidding? If I had a doll that was moving around in my place, it wouldn't be there anymore. And as quoted in the previous episode when discussing a haunted doll, it would get the Shredder McShredder, as I said with, in the Robert the Doll episode. Not that I would do that to Robert the Doll, though, because we don't want to, get any bad mojo on us. When reading the conversation between Ed and Donna, it does sound like Ed was trying to debunk or talk through the fact that something could have moved, a little bit while she was gone, because things settle, if you set down something that's cloth and you kind of pile it up, there's a possibility it's going to fall or settle. And so he was really trying to debunk that it could have moved, or settled. But her comments were that other times the doll would change rooms completely. And one night they came home and the doll was sitting in a chair by the front door and says that it was kneeling. Which kind of is, no thank you. The funny thing, though, is when they tried to recreate it, he said, okay, we're going to try and see how the doll can kneel. They could not get the doll to stay in a kneeling position without just directly falling over. In the investigation, Lorraine asked them if there was anything else that was going on, and that's when Donna kind of piped up with the doll was also leaving handwritten notes. And the handwriting on the notes appeared to be of a small child, and one of the notes saying, "Help us" or "Help Lou." Now, Lou, being the boyfriend-fiance, does put it so that the doll seems to know who Lou is. And something to add to the disturbing nature of these notes was that Donna claims there was no parchment paper in her apartment and that she didn't own parchment paper, and yet the notes were scribed on a type of paper that was like that. And also apparently she had no pencils, but the note was written in pencil. For me, personally, if I'm investigating and someone makes a claim like this, I'm going to be extremely skeptical of kind of all of it, kind of for the simple reason, where are these notes? No one could produce any notes. Second of these, I said the boyfriend, the two girls were students, right? No one has a pencil? That part was very unbelievable. You're both students, in a college, and you don't have a pencil. I'm not even a college student, and I have pencil. The other one is parchment paper. Most kitchens have parchment paper, and it would have made more sense for a college student to maybe have that instead of tinfoil because it's cheaper. But maybe I don't think that way, or someone else doesn't think that way. But these are just my thoughts, so my 2 cents, if you will. Even in that time, if you wanted to get rid of these notes because they weirded you out, right? How about we let somebody take a picture of them so that we can prove their existence? To escalate things, one night, Donna came home and again found Annabelle sitting on her bed. But this time, something was different. She looked at the doll and found what appeared to be drops of blood on the back of the hands and the doll's chest, specifically 3 drops. If you're in the paranormal world, you see 3 scratches, 3 of anything, sometimes. A lot of people will say that it's involving the Holy Trinity, mocking the Holy Trinity. I'm just, kind of putting out there what people say. Another strange but fairly minimal thing that happened was on Christmas, they apparently found a little chocolate boot on the stereo, and no one had purchased, this piece of candy. Angie claims that it was from Annabelle. As the investigation continued, Lorraine asked them, when did they come to determine that there was a spirit associated with this doll? When I was reading the conversation between them, apparently Donna says, quote, "We knew something unusual was going on," end quote. You think? Captain Obvious on that one. But apparently they wanted to know why the doll was posing in certain gestures and that maybe there was some plausible reason. So what did they do? They contacted a medium. If you could hear me face palm, because that always makes me do that. Why would you do that? Donna said that was maybe a month or 6 weeks after all this activity had started that they contacted a medium. And this is where Ed and Lorraine's version of investigating and mine are obviously very different. Lorraine simply asks, "What did you find out?" Which I do agree with, kind of start with general questions, which does seem, very level-headed. But knowing that Lorraine called herself a medium, once you have a piece of information like that, sometimes, if you're maybe not really a medium, you can take these things and start kind of running with it. So my thought is, I guess there's no way to prove what a medium is doing. So even if they told these kids, the original medium told these kids, this spirit is the Queen of England, or I'm feeling a certain way, there's no way to prove it. They are not a piece of scientific equipment. Do I believe in the mediums? Absolutely. But they are not a dime a dozen like everybody makes them seem. And most, and I say most likely, a lot of them stay in the shadows because it's not always fun for them to get all of that input, because I just can't imagine, all those things being barraged into you, just trying to leave the house. So continuing, right? Sorry. Like I said, the story kind of sends me on a little bit of a rant. Usually I'm like story, but I was just reading and that's just how I'm feeling about it. Nowadays you see a TV show or even just opening up your local yellow pages. There's no way, again, all these people are that. But I digress. Apparently though, the medium shared with them, quote, "We learned that a little girl died on this property. She was 7 years old and her name was Annabelle Higgins. The Annabelle spirit said she played in the fields long ago, before these apartments were built. There were happy times for her, she told us, because everyone around here was grown up and only concerned with their jobs. There was no one she could relate to except us. Annabelle felt that we would be able to understand her. That's why she began moving the rag doll. All Annabelle wanted was to be loved, and so she asked if she could stay with us and move into the doll. What could we do? So we said yes." end quote. Luckily for us, we have this documented conversation between the Warrens and Donna and Angie after she told them what they found out from the medium. I love that Ed asks, wait a minute, what do you mean it wanted to move into the doll? Do you mean it proposed to possess it? He's blatantly asking, why would you even entertain something like that? But you can tell he's just trying to kind of move through the motions of asking, these questions and get the information. And Donna replies, right? That was my understanding. It boggles my mind that they kept the doll in the first place and that they were like, sure, you can possess something in our house, and sleep next to me and move around and creep us out. It blew me away, the not rational thinking of that. So Donna would go on to say that it seemed harmless enough and that they were nurses and they said they were suffering every day. She said they had compassion and that they called the doll Annabelle from that time on. Continuing to read the investigation notes, I love that Ed then kind of recaps this whole crazy turn of events from them finding the doll to currently. But I have to read them to you because I love the way he approaches it, and I can imagine how he's reading it aloud to them, like he's making them kind of replay the thoughts here. I wish I could hear his tone. I don't have an audio recording of this. So Ed says, quote, all right, before you go any further, let's back up a minute. First, you got the doll for your birthday. After a while, the doll began to move, or at least change places, enough for you to notice. This made you curious, so you decided to have a seance, and a spirit came across that called herself Annabelle Higgins. This supposed little girl spirit was 7 years old and asked if it could come live with you by possessing the toy doll. Yes, you said yes, out of compassion. Then you renamed the doll Annabelle, right? End quote. And then he goes on to ask, have you seen the ghost of a little girl? He's really trying to walk through the questions. So he asks, have you seen a ghost of a little girl any time in this apartment? And if it was me, again, I personally, it would take everything in my nature not to ask this question and then move my eyes around. Like, have you seen a little girl? Like, he's trying to get them to understand, like, if you haven't seen a ghost, then it's probably not a ghost, like that sort of thing. But you don't always see a ghost, so I do understand that part. He goes on to ask them if anything else has happened in the apartment since this whole seance thing took place. And they mentioned one time a statue had lifted up across the room and tumbled in the air and then fell to the floor. None of them were near kind of the statue to have done it, and it was on the other side of the room. And apparently to them, it frightened them completely. And here comes Ed with another banger. Quote, let me ask you something else. Did you think that maybe you shouldn't have given the doll so much recognition? End quote. The next part, or comment, I should say, in these kind of listing of the conversation is in italics, which tells me, she said this in a different tone. Donna replies, it wasn't a doll. Now, personally, I would be concerned if I was in the room talking to Donna at this point, because it appears she's standing up for this entity. So now, is she being oppressed by it? And then Angie pipes up, another one, saying, yeah, right? And it's like it bothers me now that you're both protecting something that you were afraid of. And in the paranormal world, that's a little concerning. A little bit of back and forth happens with their interview, and you can tell they're getting defensive, like I said. And then Lou pipes up saying, it's a damn voodoo doll. That's what it is. That's what the fiance says. I can only imagine in my head that Ed and Lorraine both slowly kind of turn towards, Lou, and kind of like, oh, where the peanut gallery, but he's angry. He sounds like he is angry with the doll. He says, quote, I told them about that thing a long time ago. The doll was just taking advantage of them, end quote. Lou goes on to tell Ed and Lorraine that he doesn't like the doll, and the doll doesn't like him, and he never thought it was cute or that this doll was magically moving around. Angie coaxes him to tell the story about the dreams. Now, Lou goes on to tell them that the last time it happened, he had fallen asleep at home into a really deep sleep. And he was laying there, and in his mind, he saw himself wake up and that something seemed wrong. He looked around the room, but nothing seemed out of place. And then he looked down towards his feet and saw the rag doll, Annabelle. It was slowly gliding up his body. It moved over his chest and stopped. Then it put out 2 arms, one on either side of his neck, and then in a notion of kind of trying to choke him. Lou described this as if it was making some sort of electrical connection in his body. He then saw himself being strangled. He was writhing and trying to push the doll off his chest, but felt like it was kind of pushing up against a wall. That's how heavy he was, the doll was, and it's just Annabelle. This is where Lou says that the priest, that called them, said that there was someone who had been physically attacked, and this is that thing. He was the person who was physically attacked. Lou goes on to tell them that's kind of not the part, though, that he's referring to. He goes on to tell the story, part kind of the story, an occurrence with him and Angie were alone together in the apartment, and that it was around 10 or 11 at night, and that they were reading over maps because he was going to be leaving for a trip the next day. Everything was quiet when suddenly they both heard sounds coming from Donna's bedroom. The sounds were loud enough that they thought that someone might have broken into the apartment. He says he got up and quietly tiptoed to the bedroom door, which was closed, and waited for the noises to stop, and then carefully opened the door and reached in and switched on the light. Nobody was in there, except the Annabelle doll was tossed on the floor over in the corner. He went in alone and walked over to see if anything unusual had happened. But as he got close to the doll, he got this distinct impression that somebody was behind him, and he swung around quickly. Apparently, this part bothered him so badly, Lou couldn't be the one to recount the rest of the story. Angie actually had to finish the rest of the story. She claims that when he turned around, there wasn't anybody there, but he suddenly yelled and grabbed his chest, and he doubled over, cut and bleeding. And then when she got to him, blood was all over his shirt. Lou was shaking and scared, and he went back in the living room. They opened up his shirt, and on his chest, what looked like claw marks. Of course, Ed asked if the claw marks were gone, because he's like, Ed's probably like, oh my God, now I have like physical evidence if the marks were gone. Donna pipes up and says she saw the cuts on his chest as well, and Ed asks how many were there, and Angie says there were 7, 3 vertical and 4 horizontal. And he said the cuts were like a hot sensation. They were like burns. And when Lorraine asked how long the wounds took to heal, he said that they healed up almost immediately. They were half gone the next day and fully gone the day after that. And Ed went on to ask if anything had happened since then, and they replied no. Ultimately, Ed decides the only way to start this case is to contact the priest and to have an exorcism on the premises. But he explains the reason why is because there is no Annabelle, stating, quote, "There never was. You were duped," end quote. To break it down in a shorter version, essentially everything that they were seeing, Annabelle do, or the notes from the teleportation, even the manifestation of the drops of blood, it was all, a spirit, or better yet, a demonic presence of some kind, gallivanting as a child that they wanted to possess a doll. So just so that they would accept it, which that checks, that's what they do. Even in hauntings, when you hear little children, a voice or something like that, you have to remember that children are pure. So when there's no real reason for you to really see or hear a child, if you're not feeling safe in a haunting, or if something like this, like scratches, something crazy is happening, It's usually something pretending to be a child, just so that you'll trust it and either allow it and or leave it alone. And these people made a huge mistake by not only giving it a name, but then giving it permission to stay in the doll. Talk about all the wrong mistakes, even if their heart was in the right place. An indicator of that was that instead of giving it care and concern, in return, kind of giving everybody else that, allowing these things to happen, it was fear and even injury that was brought upon them. Something inhuman was floating around in that Raggedy Ann looking doll. And then they call a medium, and a medium apparently was not hipped to potentially demonic or inhuman possession or oppression spirits. And that's concerning, because I think you should, if you're going to be dealing with that, you should be. But the biggest mammy-jammy of them all was that they straight up gave permission for it to move into the doll, doubling down and locking it in for a haunted bad time. The story sometimes reminds me of Robert the Doll, because the child, in that story at least, gave the doll so much power by giving it its name, and it was its only friend, and then the doll started acting out, and still to this day has been known to things to happen. I don't personally think the doll was haunted, but whatever was floating around became part of the doll when it was named and made to feel like it truly was part of the child's life. Donna asks a good question when I was reading the conversation. During the investigation, she asked them, is the doll possessed? And Ed replies, no, the doll is not possessed. Spirits don't possess things. Spirits possess people, which I had never really kind of thought about before, but it made sense, because the doll's just cotton and things of that nature, until I read the breakdown. And then I had kind of an aha moment here. Ultimately, the priest shows up, but questions the Warrens about how they came to their conclusions, and Ed breaks it all down again. The priest performs his spiritual procedures, I'll call it, on each room, and ultimately, at the very end, Donna requests that the Warrens take over Annabelle the doll, which will now live with them. According to the Warrens, on their way back home, a very curvy road, their new car began to stall, causing the power steering and brakes to fail repeatedly. The car verged on collision, and why they didn't just bless the thing with fire at this point is beyond me. Again, I understand they're maybe trying to do something else, but they also considered just throwing it out the window into the woods, but feared that it would manage to kind of teleport its way back into the car like it had done before. So when the car had stalled once more, Ed reached into, his little bag of tricks and took out a vial and threw sprinkling holy water onto it, onto the rag doll, making the sign of the cross over it. And according to him, the disturbances in the vehicle ceased. The next few days, Ed sat the doll in a chair next to his desk and claimed that it had levitated a number of times, but that it seemed to be losing its power and fell inert. But then, as weeks continued, it would show up in various rooms in the house. So this is the point they started locking the doll in a cage in kind of the outer office building. They also claimed that Annabelle came with a friend, a black cat, that would sometimes materialize next to the doll, and that the cat would stalk around the floor, taking notice of books and other objects in Ed's office, and then return to the doll's side and dematerialize from the head down. The question I asked after reading Annabelle's story about Annabelle in the book, The Demonologist, was, has Annabelle ever had a run-in with anyone in public? Because I was curious. I didn't really know the backstory of Annabelle, or if like Robert the Doll, who had managed to possibly kill somebody. And the answer is yes. Similar to that, she's had these run-ins. After all these shenanigans, Annabelle the Doll was placed in a container in the office of Ed and what is now the Warren Occult Museum. She sits in an enclosure, very famous enclosure, with a glass front and a large cross above the window of her little area with a sign that reads, "Positively do not open." In one instance, Father Jason Bradford, a Catholic exorcist, came into the Warren house. He picked up Annabelle and said to the doll, "You're just a rag doll, Annabelle. You can't hurt anyone," and tossed the doll back in the chair. Ed told the priest, quote, "That's one thing you better not say." End quote. Father Bradford was leaving with Lorraine, pleading that he be careful. She was really concerned, driving, and to call her when he arrived home. She sensed tragedy, but the priest had to go. Father Jason arrived home a few hours later and phoned Lorraine. He explained that his brakes had failed and he entered a busy intersection and that he had been in a near-fatal accident, resulting in his vehicle being destroyed. Another incident involves a man and his girlfriend. This one is a little more modern, and you may have heard of it if you follow the story of Annabelle. A young man, after hearing about Annabelle the Doll, arrived at the museum and began to bang on the case, insisting that the doll put scratches on other people and that he also wanted to be scratched. We hear that a lot, and it's like provoking in the paranormal world. You really have to be careful with that. So Ed asked the man to leave, telling him, "Son, you need to leave." And they kicked him out, plain and simple. They kicked him out. On the way home, this haggler and his girlfriend were laughing and making fun of Annabelle when the motorcycle lost control, careening into a tree, killing the man, and instantly. And the girlfriend required hospitalization for over a year. Now, Ed warned that no one should challenge evil. No man is more powerful than Satan. So, creeps, now that we have kind of relived the accounts and went through the story, the origin story of Annabelle, and went kind of fine-tooth comb, it's time for, I really want to give my thoughts on this. Spoiler alert, I don't think my breakdown will be popular with the Creep Nation. So, I am a skeptic by nature. I always try and prove it away before accepting that it's truth. Human nature is one that's kind of speaks first in this one, in my mind. Humans lie. They want recognition, and humans have a vast imagination. It's hard to believe that a doll would move, but to say it wrote letters, teleported around the house, attacked and scratched someone, and that it had blood on its hands and chest, that's a lot. That's a lot, with no proof. There's no proof. In 1970, they had cameras and Polaroid cameras. Polaroids were first available in the late 40s. By 1970, they had them readily available, or you could borrow one. Of the two college students, and then the roommate, the fiance, and the mother that Donna, got the gift from. You mean to tell me no one had a camera? Not even a Polaroid. Could just had a regular camera to document something about this? It just, they're two nursing students, these smart chicks, and no one thought of that. The next one is the letters. Now, the letters that the doll wrote on parchment paper, right? Letters. There apparently is multiple of them. No one kept a note. If they weren't afraid, and there's also nothing written about what happened to them either that I could find. There were multiple. The one that it threatened Lou, where it was mentioned, but no one kept that one either, including Lou. It'll be like, hey, this is really happening. There was no parchment in the house and no pencils, according to them. I think I talked about this earlier. No pencils, bro? You're students. Everyone has pencils if you're a student. You have to. And then the doll apparently had blood on it. Where is it now? No one blotted the liquid. No one took a picture. Right. No camera. So then we have Lou. Good old Lou. According to the conversation, it sounded like Lou was the only one that knew that this doll was absolutely no good, right? He gets scratched. He gets attacked. Physical wounds. And no one put bandages on him or took pictures. Again, no camera. I don't understand. if he was bloody everywhere, they don't even have the garment that he was wearing, because that wouldn't disappear from the garment. Ugh. So let's move on, right? I'm trying to just get through these so you guys don't seriously get angry at me. So they call the medium. Anyone from the Warren team talk to the medium? They call the priest, and then they call the Warrens. If they called a priest, could they ask for a camera? Again, because the church is going to ask for evidence. You're gonna have to prove that you need a exorcism. So there's that. So now we have claims by the young college level student and no evidence. We have a medium that was called in that potentially just did what the usual five and dime medium does and read their emotions and potentially read false information to them. Do I believe again in mediums? Absolutely. But there's no way that everybody all the time is mediums. Then we have the Warrens. I really like how upfront and candid Ed was with these questions. He would just be like, so you basically, this is my changing of it. So you didn't think that you probably shouldn't tell a possessed doll can live here? I really appreciated how he finished. When they finished the initial questions, they called the priest and the church approved an exorcism from the living space. The Warrens took over Annabelle. She put their life in danger on the way back home. It's not their fault that there was nothing recorded, the journey, nor the journey of that in the car, or the priest, or the motorcyclist. Is it chance? Maybe if there was anyone to blame, the demon on Annabelle, sure, that would be an easy blame. But I don't, I'm going to say it, you guys are going to hate me. I don't think Annabelle is real. I don't think the story is real. There's no evidence anywhere to back up. I'm talking blood you can't explain, pictures, recordings. I need to see that. I think there is out there that people have, there's more things with cameras and whatnot, but man, that's a tough one. So, but I want to know your thoughts. Creepy Confidential is kind of a place where all of us can study up on all of the interesting and creepy things that are out there. So we want to hear what you think. If you can find our Instagram post, if you'll see the Instagram post with our episode art with Annabelle on it, if you want, drop us a line. Tell me what you think. Now, thank you for tuning in for this episode on Annabelle, the possessed doll, and I hope that you will stop by, in a few weeks to listen to our last episode of 2024. Creepy Confidential will be chatting about the Donner Party, tragedy and cannibalism and family to help get you through your Thanksgiving day when you've finished with your pie and don't feel like listening to your Uncle Chuck anymore. You'll be able to tune into our episode. So stay creepy, my friends, and I'll hope you join me next time right here on Creepy Confidential.
I'm Ted,
I'm JJ.
and we're here to tell you about our show, Conspiring to Argue.
I like it.
That is not relevant. What do we do on the show?
Well, on our podcast, what we do is take conspiracy theories, and either Ted or myself will argue about if the conspiracy is real or not.
Yep, and sometimes the conspiracies are silly. Sometimes they're, in the pantheon of the greatest conspiracies of all time. It's a mixed bag.
Sometimes they're about aliens.
So check us out wherever you listen to podcasts.
Sometimes they're about murder.